Hey, welcome back to the channel. I'm Ryan Smith and this is Tribal Warfare Group, and this is going to be a little bit more of a different kind of video that I typically shoot. Most of my videos are dealing with tactical applications, prepping, gear, things of that nature. But today I wanted to touch a subject that is near and dear to my heart, and I think that if anybody has a platform needs to talk about this topic as well. And today we're talking about mental illness in first responders or in law enforcement or in military. Just a little bit about myself. If you're new to the channel, I am a 20-year veteran police officer. Excuse me. Currently, right now, I am a detective investigating sexual assaults, and that tends to wear on you as well too. But that's not what we're here talking about my accolades or anything like that. We're talking about mental illness and depression when it comes to first responders. A lot of times as police officers, we shield ourselves off from things that are troubling us because we feel like we can handle what's ever going on, right? We're the shepherd, we're the protectors. So we're not supposed to have any wrinkles in our armor. But with that, we limit ourselves to our full potential by not addressing things that happen to us or things that bother us. I'm going to be transparent today, and I'm going to share a little bit about my experience, and then we'll kind of maybe tackle a couple of different ways to spot, when a person may be going in a crisis, and just because you're a cop and you have issues that are bothering you doesn't mean you're a bad police officer. Doesn't mean that you're not good at the job. Doesn't mean anything's wrong with you. You're human, and things affect us just like any other human. And in fact, it probably affects us a little more because of the nature of our job. We have so many different things that we have to accomplish and tackle. We have to be able to process information very, very quickly, make the right decision. We have the stress of, is my use for force, is it going to be justified? Was that shooting justified? Was this traffic stop? Did I do everything correctly? Was my report right? And then the environment we live in now, the optics of law enforcement portrays us in a negative outlook. Now, taking full accountability, that's not saying that we don't have bad apples amongst us, because we do. And I know I work hard all the time to exploit and expose those individuals that should not wear the badge. People that have racist, agendas or certain beliefs that would cause them to look at other races differently. Those are the ones that don't need to be behind the badge. Those are the ones that make traffic stops based off of stereotypes and not off of what the law says you can do and should do. But I don't want to get off into a tandem on that. I want to talk about what we go through as police officers and firefighters and nurses on a day-to-day that causes stress that we don't even realize. So I'll be transparent and I'll let you know a little bit about myself. So like I said, I've been in law enforcement 20 years, and in the beginning of my career, I had a reoccurring dream that I had every year. And the dream was the same every single time. And it bothered me, but I bottled it up thinking it was just a dream. So the dream pretty much went like this. I was on duty and a situation arose where I had to use deadly force. I pulled my duty weapon and pointed it at the threat. And when it came time to using deadly force, the trigger of the weapon was so heavy that I couldn't pull it. And no matter how hard I tried to pull it, it became a bit heavier and heavier and heavier. I end up being shot in the video. Even talk about it now, you know, brings back some of those old emotions. I got shot on duty, and every time it's when I woke up. Now, that dream bothered me for so many years. I didn't know what it meant. I never brought that up to anybody. I never spoke to anybody about it. I just bottled it up. And every year I dealt with that to the point where I would go on duty. Sometimes I would hesitate in certain situations because of that. And this is in my rookie years. Well, as time went on, the dream started going away. And during the time in 2000, I want to say 18 or 19, I was involved in a high-speed pursuit off a basic traffic stop. I pulled behind a vehicle that didn't have the lights on. It was basically just an equipment violation stop. And the car proceeded to accelerate and refuse to stop. I ended up getting into a full-out pursuit, and it went into 2 counties. And I ended up having to have State Patrol assist me with the stop sticks ahead. Once we got the vehicle stopped from the stop sticks, the vehicle stopped, got out the vehicle, obviously weapons are drawn, ordered the individual out the car. Now, in that particular moment, for at least a good 2 seconds, in my mind, I went back to that dream. And in that particular hot second, in my mind, I'm questioning myself, processing this information. What if this individual pulls out a gun? What if he does this and this? What is my next reaction? In that time, I, for a split second, froze. And it wasn't until I remembered the training that I'm going to talk about, I snapped out of it and was able to get front sight focus and get the individual in custody. I'm going to take another sip of coffee. And this is going to be a real, different video. Not going to be, any protocol or anything like that. So, but today I just want to be vulnerable. But I, for so many years, suffered from depression from that dream. And it wasn't until I spoke to someone and that the dream started changing. Now, the only person I really ever shared this with is my wife, right? But then I started praying, and I am a Christian, and I started praying. And I have my Bible here, and I'm going to read you something just real quick. And it's coming from the book of Psalms. And it's one that you probably heard before, but it's very, very crucial, at least for me in my time period. And it starts with in verse 1. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness. For his name's sake, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Now, like I said, this is not a sermon, and I'm not here to preach to you, but I can tell you that if I didn't pray and I didn't go to God with that dream probably would have got me killed. And I don't know why that dream started occurring, but what I was able through counseling and ministry and church, I was able to determine that my humanity was giving me a checkmate. We're all human. Even as police officers, if we have to use deadly force, that's still going to affect us. But my struggle with being a Christian was starting to outweigh my reality of what my job details. And I had to remember that in the Word of God, the Bible tells us to obey the laws of the land. So, me as a police officer, I'm doing my job. And if I have to use deadly force because a person didn't want to obey the law and they were a threat to society, then I know that I am doing the right thing. Does that mean it's not going to hurt me? Does that mean it's not going to affect me? Of course it will. All my new officers that I FTO, I tell them the same thing. The what if. What if you're on duty and you have to pull that trigger? You can't pull that bullet back. Will you be able to live with what comes after that? Will you be able to deal with the guilt that will come over you? Now, I've never shot anyone on duty. I've come close. Thank God I haven't had to. But I'll share a story of a colleague of mine. He was a little bit more seasoned in his years on the force than I was. Excuse me, sorry. But he had to shoot someone in the line of duty, an individual that had a gun and was threatening to shoot someone else. So we were in the car and we were going out of town to some training, and we were just talking about, tactics and law enforcement and gear like most guys do in this profession. And somehow we got on the topic of shooting in the line of duty. And something I said triggered him. And this grown man, this big, strong, buff of a man, broke down and started crying. At first, I didn't know what was going on, so I just was quiet for a minute. And I asked him, like, yo, bro, what's wrong? And he said, you know what? Up until that minute right there, we were having a conversation. But he said, something broke, and I just remembered all the feeling that I had when I had to shoot that guy. And it all came rushing back to him. And it had happened years before, longer in his career. Years that went on, and he went on to serve, and he thought that he had got control of it. But he never did, because he bottled it up and he compartmentalized it and thought that he could deal with it. And we end up pulling a rest stop, and we talked for like 3 hours. And we talked. And just by talking, something broke, and it was a relief. That's what we have to do as first responders. If you see your partner and he's starting to kind of shallow off and kind of avoiding being around people, and he's not typically like that, and he's quiet and he's reserved and he looks like something's going on with him, sometimes you have to go and say, hey, bro, are you okay? Is there anything that's going on? You want to talk about it? And a lot of times guys will say, no, I'm fine. But I'm telling you, if you see those signs, ask that person, is there anything you want to talk about? Because if you ignore those signs, you could be possibly avoiding taking on a situation to help this person. Not avoiding, but you could be not in a position to help that person because you didn't want to speak up. And depression and mental illness is one of the number one causes of suicide inside of our community, our law enforcement community. And I made it a point to make sure that, one, I constantly break down and debunk everything that's dealing with me, whether I'm talking to my wife or I'm talking to one of the deacons at church. I no longer hold that stuff inside of me. I am a Christian, so I take it to God and I pray, but I also talk about it. I don't let it build up inside of me and caused me to have more of those dreams that I have, or more of those feelings of anxiety. And that's another thing that we deal with as law enforcement officers, as anxiety, because we're constantly in flight or fight mode. We're constantly, from being a cruiser, just patrolling, to making that traffic stop, the unknown threat, going through that building, knowing if there's going to be anyone inside that building, or, answering a call of a domestic violence. I mean, those are dangerous calls in itself. So we're constantly on the aggression, and then when it's over, we're right back to being calm. So if you take that up and down, it's hard to break that down and be normal. I'm just being real with you. I mean, if you don't address it, if you don't talk about it now, you could find yourself being so depressed and so full of rage that it will question and it will jeopardize your career and your decision making. I've seen several cops quit because of mental illnesses, and because they weren't able to deal with it. And it's sad that you watch this person that went through the academy, which sometimes for 6 months to a year, go through all the background checks and all the things you have to do to become a police officer, and then get into the job and find out that they're not able to do it anymore because they can't deal with the stress. I know myself, I've had my share of stress to the point where I didn't know if I could continue the job as well. I've seen countless dead bodies, burnt children, decapitated heads. I mean, I can go on and on and on. When you deal with that kind of situations, and you're constantly exposed to that kind of evil, it does something to you. There's, you hear from soldiers that have come home from multiple deployments and have been in combat, and you hear them talk about how they can't deal with this, what they went with. I have several friends that they get triggered by firecrackers, and that's like, what's a firecracker? But they get literally triggered by firecrackers. Have friends that can't go around certain areas because it's a trigger for them. And a lot of times we just bottle it up and keep it moving. And that's not good for anybody. And if we don't find an outlet to talk to someone, then it could be very, very dangerous. And I'm talking to you, especially you young cops. If you don't find a way to talk to someone about what you're dealing with on patrol, or whatever your case may be, you could find yourself in a bad situation. If dealing with depression and mental illness, questions and will alter your decision making while on duty. It will take what should be an easy situation, and you could make it worse because you're off balance. And you can't be that way as a police officer. The public looks at us as protectors, and we are supposed to be held to a higher standard, and we have to be able to issue the correct and fair amount of justice that the law allows us to offer. But also, we have to be fair in when we do it. And if we don't take the time to talk to our peers and check on them and say, are you okay? Then we are doing each other a disservice. I have friends that I call them, they'll call me, hey, what's going on? Just checking your temperature. What's going on? Everything all right? What's going on with the family? It's questions like that. Just a quick text. Hey, bro, just think about you. What you want to do today? You want to go, to the range? You want to shoot? You want to shoot some hoops? Those kind of check-ins or be the difference between a person putting a weapon in their mouth and committing suicide. Those buddy check-ins. Check in with your buddy to say, are you okay? I'm here for you. If there's something you want to talk about, talk to me. I was not one of those guys. I believed that I could handle everything. I believed that I could deal with it and just ignore it and override it and keep going. And like I said, that dream, it haunted me for years. And it wasn't until I addressed the problem, it wasn't until I looked it in the face and I owned it that I was able to overcome it. And a lot of times, us as officers, we don't have that opening with other friends to talk to because we don't want to look like we're a bad cop or a bad firefighter or a bad nurse, because nurses deal with mental illness on a regular basis, especially trauma nurses. My wife's a trauma nurse, and the amount of stress that they deal with there is amplified to what we deal with on the streets. So it doesn't matter whether you're a police officer, firefighter, or a nurse. If you are dealing in a public service where you are around situations that can be dangerous and hostile, you're going to deal with a level of stress. And it's how you deal with that stress is going to determine how you're going to live the rest of your life. And I'm making this video because I got clarity and help with this, and I want you to as well. Like I said, if you see something that looks wrong, ask questions. Even if there's nothing wrong, ask questions. Ask questions. Now you don't. So you get to the point where you're like, well, is this person safe on duty? Do I report him to chain of command? But if I report him to chain of command that he's acting funny or he's not acting the same way, now potentially could cause this guy to lose his job. So before it gets to that point, if you see something that looks strange, check on your buddy. Buddy check. Hey bro, what's up? Are you okay? Just a quick check-in. I mean, you believe it or not. Hey, let's go grab some food, man. You seem like you're a little depressed. Let's go to the gym. Let's go work out. Let's go crush a nice workout. Stuff like that, man. I'm telling you, it is the difference maker in between a person dealing with stress and a person having an outlet to unload the stress. Because sometimes, like me and one of my closest friends, we'll be going through things and we'll just offload. He'll offload and just say, this is what I'm going through, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, this is what I'm going through. But because we're talking to each other, the healing process is happening while we're talking. We are offloading it. We're talking, but in the midst of talking, we're working on solutions, which gives us more motivation to keep on going. So like I said, I'm not an expert on mental health other than what I've been trained and what I've seen in my personal life and what I've seen other people go through and when I've talked to other people. But I do know that if you have a platform, especially YouTubers, there needs to be a time when we take a pause from everything we do and we talk about mental health. Even if we are just talking about get help, if we're just providing a number, if we're just saying, hey, I will pray with you, I will talk with you, whatever the case may be. We need to focus on mental health, especially for first responders, because there are so many men and women out here that are doing this job and they are dealing with stress that they cannot cope with, and it is affecting their decision making and ultimately affecting the public that we serve. And that is what we don't want to do. We don't want an issue that we're dealing with internally to compromise our decision making and our ability to be police officers or firefighters or nurses, because the decisions that we make ultimately affect another person. So that's just a quick rant for myself. Again, like I said, this is a different video from what I normally shoot, but it was near and dear to my heart, and I felt that I need to say something about it. So if you know anybody that's dealing with those same kind of issues, make sure you say something to them. And if you know any outlets or companies that offer assistance like that, hey, drop it in the comment. So I'm Ryan Smith, telling you to always check on your buddy, always check on your wingman, and always train like your life depends on it. God bless, and we'll see you next time. Stay soon.